Hi, everybody. This is our next interesting project to discuss, open source project. Vitaly is the author of the project and the product, which is on GitHub. Vitaly will tell us everything about it. I will strongly encourage you to try it out. But first, let's hear out what it is. Vitaly, tell us about it.
Yeah, hello. My name is Vitaly, and I'm an author of the open source project. It's called PIP License Checker. And actually, it is a command line tool for compliance, for license compliance. Basically, it consumes a list of dependencies, third-party dependencies that you're using in your project. Optionally, with the licenses they're distributed under. And as a result, it produces a report. And report says what kind of licenses, open source licenses, are used. Actually, the types of the licenses. Optionally, you can also ask this command line tool to report cases when some unacceptable licenses are found. For example, you're not comfortable with maybe copyleft licenses, and you may ask this command line tool to detect them and also report.
And how does it work technically? I don't understand how it detects.
Well, basically, it has a bunch of regular expressions and some heuristics, and it consumes the license names and try to map the license name to the license type. For example, you may hear something about MIT license, which is widely used, and it's kind of permissive license. And technically, we have just a mapping saying that whenever you find MIT license, please make sure it's reported as a permissive license. Or maybe...
What do you mean? Sorry, what do you mean find? Let's say that I have the source code in Python and I have my files, my classes, whatever. Like where exactly it's going to find the license?
It is a little bit different. Actually, I would say there are two operation modes for this command line tool. Originally, it was deemed and developed for Python, and then extended to other platforms like Java or Clojure or whatever. And for Python, it can do the following. As you may probably know, Python uses a package manager called pip. And pip comes with something called requirement files. It's basically a list of the third-party dependencies that you want to install in your project. And what my command line tool does, it actually consumes this list and try to find metadata for these third-party modules, libraries, and using this metadata to detect the license name. And now that we have a license name, we can detect using these heuristics the license type. Also, if it's not a Python project, not the requirements files with a list of third-party dependencies, you may use some third-party tools obtaining this list of the packages with the license names. And once you have the list of dependencies and the licenses, you can detect the license types for them using the PIP license checker.
And does it go deeper from one dependency to transitive dependencies?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. Actually, originally, I thought that would be a nice thing to have. But then I decided that it's better to rely on some third-party tools. For example, when it comes to Python, of course, we can do some tricky stuff like version resolution. You may imagine that this requirement files may contain something like, please go get the package X of the version higher than 5.0, but lower than 5.2.3. And then we will have to do package resolution, version resolution on our end, and also try to go deeper with the transitive dependencies.
Right.
But eventually, having in mind all the complexities of this task, I decided, why do I have to waste time on that if the package management tools already have that? We can use these third-party tools to have the full list of the dependencies for a project. Like with a Python, you just go with the pip freeze and have the full list of the dependencies, and then you just pass the final list to the command line tool.
So you first expect me to run this freeze, and then when I know for sure what are the dependencies, then you just check whatever is coming to me through transitive dependencies. Doesn't matter. You just check the full list, which stays with me now, right?
Yeah. So I expect to be on the safer side. I expect you as a user to come up with the full list of the dependencies that you are using. And I think it's quite easy having all these wonderful tools that we have, like pip package manager. And yeah, then you just pass the list to the command line tool.
And why I checked your code? I mean, check repository. Why you don't have the pip installer, or I missed it? Can I install your tool using pip?
No,
Or
because
it's not a Python product.
it is not a Python project.
Okay,
It's actually written in Clojure, which is a kind of Lisp dialect based on JVM platform.
And why did you make something for Python community in Clojure? Just to, I'm curious.
I think this is something common when it comes to learning something new. I think that sometimes developers just enjoy building things and explore new technologies, new technological stacks. And I think there are some few motivation for starting an open source project. Sometimes you just want to refactor something, maybe out of older legacy projects in something smaller, a library, and reuse it afterwards, maybe in new projects or something. But sometimes it's just, you know, a pet project, something you want to tinker with, something to build new. And actually, since it's containerized application, it's easy to use it for whatever technological stack you want it to use for.
So you mean containerized, you mean you have Docker container, which...
Yeah, exactly.
And also you have the GitHub action, I can see. For
Yes, exactly. The GitHub action is, I think it's super useful thing, because actually it's a small piece of code you can incorporate into your GitHub CI pipeline, just plug it in and use.
And the action will do what? It will break the build if some of the licenses are not good enough.
Actually, it will not. It is just a very thin interface to the command line tool. And it's up to you what you want to achieve, because some people want really to pipeline to fail if some license types are detected, but some probably just want to have maybe statistics, maybe collect some stats, and later
where do
decide.
you publish? Where do you publish the statistics? Where do you go? Where does it go?
Actually, every single GitHub action consists of two things: input fields and output fields. Input is something you can use for maybe passing in option flags, arguments to your command line tool. And output is simply it's actually a string. And the action may produce this output string nicely formatted in, like, tabular format with the dependencies names and license names and maybe some total statistics, but also it allows you to fail. You can pass in the fail option. So whenever certain license type is found, please fail the pipeline. And in such a way, you can make sure that if the wrong license type is detected, you will get the failed CI pipeline.
Yeah, but if it's not failed, then the output, well, usually when, for example, I can compare that with coverage analysis tools, which you run the unit test and they collect the coverage, but they publish it somewhere. So in the end, you get like a web site or a web page where all the statistics and some graphs or whatever are published. But in your case, it seems like the question is, where does it go? Where I'm going to see it after the GitHub action runs everything.
Yeah, you will see it in the GitHub action
Log
output, the log. Yeah, and optionally, it's up to you. Maybe you want to incorporate some Slack notifications. Maybe you want to send it to Telegram channel or something. Once you got this output report, you can do whatever you want to do with it, with this output.
And what about other languages? Right now, it's only for Python, correct?
Not quite. As I said, it operates in two modes, both for Python and everything else. And by everything else, it's actually, something I call external files. Let's say you are developing something in Kotlin, maybe a mobile application, and there are a bunch of plugins that allows you to collect this license data, the metadata from the third-party dependencies in your project. And you can, depending on the plugin, on the platform, and the programming language, it may be something like a flat CSV file. It may be something like property lists that Apple Corporation use for Swift and iOS. It may be something more esoteric like ADN format that Clojure developers use. So I actually support a bunch of formats, and I expect that CSV is something ubiquitous. So whenever you go, maybe it's a Go programming language, and you definitely will find a tool that will produce the list of the dependencies with its license name and can export it to CSV. And once you got this CSV, you just pass them into my command line tool, and you get the license compliance report.
But hold on, but where do I get the CSV will be the result? What's going to stay in the CSV? Let's say, okay, I'm in Java world. So let's say I have a number of jar dependencies, and each jar dependency is basically an archive, like zip archive with hundreds of files inside. So what do I provide to your tool? All of these files, or what?
Well, I expect, in this case, I expect that you use some other tool, just as I said, something like, for example,
we have Maven. Yeah, I can extract all the files from all the jar files. It's not a problem. I can do that. I can extract whatever they have and put in some directory. And what do I give to your tool? All files or what?
No. I expect, in my tool, I expect a CSV file that simply contains two columns. The first one is a package name, and the second one is a license name.
But I don't know the license name. Hold on. I don't know what's the license for this package. What?
Oh, yes, and this is what is for some third-party tool, just like I said. For example, there is a very popular third-party tool, Gradle license plugin. And you can use it to obtain this CSV file or maybe JSON.
Oh, okay.
So I try to make my tool very universal so that different programming languages and platforms can be used for license type detection.
Oh, okay, I understand. So first I need to run the tool, and the tool will generate this spreadsheet with the name of the package, and then it's going to be MIT, GPL, MIT, Apache, GPL, and so on and so forth, right?
Exactly.
That's the first step. And then I give it to your tool, and the tool will say there are no lines with the MIT, or what?
And my tool will tell you, my tool will add a third column to this report, which is license type. And by license type, I mean, something like all the licenses actually can be divided into multiple categories, something that is ranging on their permissiveness or restrictiveness, actually on the conditions that impose to you as a user of these third-party tools. And then you can decide if you're happy with these third-party dependencies or not. if it's in compliance with what do you do with your project containing all these third-party dependencies or not. Maybe you're violating something.
Okay, say I have a product in Java and I have MIT license.
Mm-hmm.
And then I run through all the dependencies and I have 50 dependencies.
Mm-hmm.
And then there will be 50 names of different licenses. So what exactly do I tell your tool in order to fail the build?
Okay, yes, you have to decide what's actually the outcome that you are not comfortable with. Probably you are running private company and you write proprietary code in Java with these 50 dependencies, and you know that you have to distribute the work, this larger work containing all these third-party libraries to your customers. So basically you will distribute something, the larger work containing these third-party dependencies to someone. And now you are probably will not be okay with disclosing the source code for your project because it's proprietary. Then you probably will be not okay with copyleft licenses that say explicitly whenever you modify the code, or maybe just linking in case of some stronger copyleft licenses like GPL, and when you distribute the derivative work, you will have to first disclose the source code of your work, and then license your work under GPL or compatible, which may be a disaster for a proprietary code. And in this case, what you tell to my command line tool, please detect strong copyleft licenses.
But your tool but there are already names of these licenses in the column. So what's your tool is doing? The tool will just go through the list and say, these lines are not good. Like, I don't understand exactly the value of your tool. If I already know the names of the licenses, why do I need your tool? I can just scroll through the list and just make a regular expression checker, which will just say, okay, if there's MIT there, just break the build.
Mm-hmm.
Why do I need a tool for that? What's the problem?
Actually,
which I cannot solve by myself.
Yeah, this is a very good question because, we have something over 100 popular open source licenses in the wild. And actually, it's counting. It's ever growing the number of open source licenses. And even if you know that, for example, a GPL license is something you don't want to have in your project, it's just one of these hundreds of licenses. So you either have to invest a lot of time into reading all these licenses that exist, maybe some approved by some open source organization or something, or you have to rely on someone, some expertise, some legal expertise that will tell you, okay, not only GPL version 3 is a potential threat for your project, but these other licenses are also some kind of problematic. And this is what my tool is great for.
And how does your tool understand this? You have a full catalog of all licenses, or
sort of? It's kind of I have a bunch of mappings with regular expressions. Yeah, and I had to learn a lot about these licenses to categorize them into different types.
And there are, in total, we just have 3 categories or more.
Well, let me explain it. For now,
so my question is, how do I configure your tool? So what do I tell to your tool? Like, do I say category 2 is no go, or I give a long description of some long configuration, like this is no go, that and goes. Like, give me an example. How do I configure your tool?
Okay, for example, you are developing a front end in JavaScript or maybe a mobile app. And you know that by fact of having your mobile application in Google Play or some other platforms, you're actually distributing something. And you also know that in this case, so the distribution is kind of, yes, we know that will happen. And you know that it is it's something that will trigger stronger copyleft licenses. Like GPL may be
Trigger, what do you mean trigger?
By trigger, I mean whenever you include the license of this type and you distribute, for example, your larger work, that will trigger this mechanism.
Illegal.
Yeah,
that's
legal.
illegal. Okay, it's going to be illegal.
Yes, that's going to be illegal.
Okay, got it.
Unless you know.
Right, I got it. Okay.
So yeah, and you have to understand what types of the licenses is no-go for you. And you know, for this case specifically, it is stronger copyleft and maybe something like copyleft over the network. And you just specify 2 types of licenses that you are not happy with. And if
so hold on, what do you mean specify? Let's one step back.
Pass in. Maybe that was the wrong word for that. But I have an option flag that's it's called fail flag, and you just put one word, copyleft.
So I say fail equals copyleft.
Yes.
Okay.
If you want to pass more options, like please.
That's my question. How many more options do I have? 2, 3, or 100?
No. It's something like copyleft, permissive, other, and error.
So basically 4 categories.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
If you want to go a little bit deeper with some more fine-grained control, copyleft can also be divided into 3 categories, like strong copyleft, weak copyleft, network copyleft. But that's
so
it.
All licenses, okay, I understand. So basically your tool is like a mapping from name of the licensee of the license to the category. So
Yes.
all your tool knows is just the license ABC is permissive and license XYZ is the copyleft.
Yeah.
And then I give you the list of licenses and you say, okay, your list contains at least 1 copyleft, so that's why the build fails.
Yes.
It looks like a simple task. It's a script of like 5 lines, no?
Not really.
And the catalog, and then a catalog.
Well, yeah. I cannot say it is a huge library. It's something like 4,000 of lines of code.
So what these 4,000 lines are doing, because to me it seems like really 5, maybe, okay, 50 lines, but not 4,000. What exactly is the
yes,
work there?
Something big is related to Python support, which, as I said, in Python mode, we can also resolve versions and do stuff like that, which is probably a bigger chunk of code. The smaller chunk of code is for actually, for retrieving this metadata for Python packages. Actually, as you probably know, there is so-called Python package index, which is something like maven.org or RubyGems, so a registry, a repository for holding all the Python packages available. We can go there and retrieve the metadata for packages to detect licenses, and then by having licenses, then detect the license type. And yeah, the smaller part is mapping, but this mapping, I cannot say it's just a simple lines of codes. You know, whenever
and
you.
Why would you? Yeah, I got it. I understand. Why shouldn't you, or because without the why, shouldn't you break this product into 2 parts? It seems like the first part is actually understanding Python and retrieving this list, this CSV file from Python code. And the second part is universal, which works with just the file, and it can work with Java, with the file coming from Java or whatever, any other language. So it seems like there are 2 parts in your open source product.
Exactly. And actually, I think this is one of the reasons why I'm here having this interview, because actually I wanted to have some feedbacks to decide what to do next. So what my next step after the first major release. And this is what and once I got some feedback, maybe I will split it into 2 projects. This is exactly.
And what's the file? What's the file where we have the information about the mapping? Because I'm looking right now. I'm trying to find where it is.
You have to go over source directory and then go to license closure file.
Okay, license. That's in the resources, or
it is SRC, SRC.
License closure. Okay, got it.
Mm-hmm.
But this is for, oh, this is the regular expressions which help you understand the type of license, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you made it yourself. So you found, like, you read all these licenses and you designed these regular expressions which allow you to detect.
I have to admit, I haven't read the full list because some of the licenses, they kind of derive from another ones. But yeah, all in all, I had to.
But in this case, you understand the type of the license by the text.
Yes. So I have to. Yeah.
So this is the first part of the product where you look at the files or the text files, and then you understand what kind of license is there only for Python code.
Now, actually, the file you're looking at with this regular expression, this is something to. This regular expression are run against the license name. So we have a license name, and then we have to decide which category this license fall under. If it's a stronger copyleft or weaker copyleft, or maybe it's permissive.
Interesting. And do you know any other projects which do something like that?
Well, actually not. I know that there are some for-profit companies that are doing something like that. And for some reason, I actually know that reason, but they charge a lot of money for this kind of audit. And one of the reasons for that is actually has something to do with legal stuff, which is a huge topic. It is very jurisdiction related. You have to read all these huge piles of text, all these licenses, because some of the licenses are really easy to grasp, like MIT or zero closed BSD. It's just easy. An average developer can grasp it in a couple of minutes. But when it comes to something more sophisticated like MPL, Mozilla Public License, or GPL, it is something big. You have to invest a lot of time into it.
But invest a lot of time, invest in exactly what kind of work? What do you spend time for?
To do what? You have to decide what kind of a license is it. So
you need to categorize it.
Exactly.
And there are only 4 categories.
Yeah.
So it is difficult to look at the license and say which category it belongs to?
It is. Because, yes, actually, there are a lot of exceptions that may apply. For example, distribution. Some licenses say that you, let's have Linux. Everybody uses Linux in enterprise and startup, for pet projects, whatever. Actually, the GNU Linux, the kernel, and the basic tool chain that GNU developed, it is under GPL license. But companies are using it still because, for example, for GPL license, it is okay, even if you modify it somehow, the original work, it is okay if you run it on your private server. It's doing something like maybe a background task or something, and you don't have to disclose the source code, your modifications. But some licenses are more sophisticated, like GNU Afra GPL. It says if the modified work is available over the network, over the internet, and people are using it is categorized as distribution, and in this case the copyleft is triggered, and you have to read the conditions of the license to understand that.
So you read all of these licenses?
Not all of them, but a lot of them.
No, but for those which you categorize, you read all of them? Or no?
Not really. So I as I said, some of the licenses, they kind of derived. Sometimes you can go through the frequently asked questions section that actually have some kind of concise description of the conditions for that license. So I cannot, you cannot use it and rely on it as on proper legal advice probably. But still, I think it is good enough to have in the pipeline to have rough estimation of the risks.
No, still, I have the same. I didn't understand the answer. So, in order for you to make a more or less, grounded decision, because I trust you in this case. If I'm your user, then I trust you instead of hiring lawyers. I trust you that you make the decision whether MIT is copyleft or it's permissive or it's okay for me. So in order for you to make this decision, you have to act as a lawyer. So you have to read the license, and then you can guarantee me that your decision is reasonable.
Yeah, I definitely cannot guarantee you, and this is something that even whenever even licenses, most of the open source licenses say no guarantee. It's kind of liability waiver. So
no, I mean guarantee that I am not violating anything.
Yeah, I also cannot guarantee that because I'm not a lawyer. So I tried my best to categorize.
Yeah, but at least I understand. Of course, you cannot guarantee in a court, but you kind of give me the feeling that you guarantee something. But in this case, you need to read all the licenses, and then you have to somehow prove me that your decision is more at least reasonable. At least you read them. That's my point.
Yes, I tried to read quite a lot of them.
So how did you make decisions for those who you didn't read?
On those where I didn't read, I relied on some more concise description of it.
Concise means what? Shorter?
Shorter.
Okay.
For example, some licenses they publish along with the original text. They have something like frequently asked questions section, which is really short description of what's going on there.
Okay. Okay, got it. And do you have somewhere the place where you explain your reasons?
Reasons for what?
For the decisions you made. So you took GPL license and made a decision that this license is permissive. So how do I know? I mean, is there a place where you explain your decision?
In the application, you mean? In the
anywhere where I can read it, maybe some text.
Not yet, but I'm trying to come up with a series of blog posts where I will try to explain my decisions. And this is something that is in progress now.
Because I think this is the most important part, because it seems that in your project there are two elements. The first one is basically the script, which is, in my opinion, quite primitive. But the second part is your knowledge base, which is, in my opinion, very complex thing to do. Like you said, there are lawyers who are hired to do that, and there's money people pay for that stuff. So the first part I can do myself. I don't need your help. Like go through the list and basically do the regular expression checking. It's easy. I don't need the Docker container for that. I can do it. It's a simple script. But the decisions to make, that I don't know how to do, because some of the licenses will have really strange, like really rare names, which I don't understand even, and I don't have time to go through these licenses and to read all of them. So I would rely on your knowledge base. So if you provide that knowledge base, but the knowledge base have to be, they have to explain why the decisions are made, because every time I see the violation, so I go through the list of licenses, I run the script, and then for some licenses, I will ask your knowledge base, and your knowledge base will say, okay, this license is category 3, which is not acceptable for me. And then I will think, okay, what do I do next? Do I exclude this library, this package from my code, or replay, or I don't know, maybe I just ignore this because it's not so important. So I need to make a decision. So I will go somewhere looking for help. And the first place was going to be you. So I will go to your knowledge base and say, why did you make this decision? Maybe you're wrong. Maybe you made a mistake. So if in your code base I did not find this explanation, then I will probably stop using your knowledge base. So I think this is very important that you explain for each license why you made this decision.
Yeah, it's a good point. And actually, as my milestone that I want to achieve next is something to do exactly what you described. So what I want to do is probably kind of transfer some of my personal expertise in this field to the command line tool itself. So something like, let's say you as a user want to maybe go with some kind of predefined profile, some usage profile, maybe something like I'm developing a mobile application and the profile will be a mobile app, or maybe front end, or maybe back end that is running on the private server. And you pass in this mobile, this profile, usage profile, and as a result of my scripts running, so along with the report, you will have something like actions. For example, we detected strong copyleft license, and we know that for this profile usage, it is unacceptable. And we also display something like what actions are expected you to take, something like disclose the source code, place the original copyright notice, and stuff like that. And maybe also make sure that a user can pass in undesired actions, like no way that I can disclose my proprietary code. And if this action is actually required by some of the licenses, then we fail the pipeline. So yeah, something like transfer of this expertise into the tool.
I think that you need to that would be my recommendation, to rename this project from pip license checker, because pip immediately tells me, okay, I'm in Java world, so I forget it, I don't use it. So you restrict, seriously restrict your audience. So people not from the Python world, they don't need your tool. But this is wrong, because your tool contains the very important component, Knowledgebase, which is perfectly all right for the Java world. So I would recommend you to split this product into two parts. The first one is license detector for pip. That's good. That's something which you probably need to develop. That's okay. But the second part is, I would maybe even rename this repository to, I don't know, maybe awesome licenses. You know, this awesome prefix, maybe awesome licenses repository, where you see we have something like that, like a curated list of awesome licenses on that's a very short one. So maybe you can create something like awesome licenses, which is going to be the knowledge base on GitHub, where each license is going to have like individual file. For each license, you're going to define a file, maybe in YAML format, in JSON, something like not just a text file, maybe Markdown, so the file with some configuration details. And then in this file, you will say, okay, this is the license, the text of the license, which you get somewhere. Then you get the text of your decision, which you make, like why this license is categorized like permissive or not. And then maybe the information which you just mentioned, how this license can be matched with my license. So if, for example, I develop the product in MIT, and then I have 15 different licenses in my dependencies, then your awesome licenses script, which is very, some script or knowledge base, will tell me whether it's a match. Like, can I make my product MIT when I use GPL, Apache, and blah, 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 all the list of licenses. So maybe like a matrix, which is mapping different licenses to each other. So, I mean, I'm a little bit concerned about your classification on just 4 categories. It seems to me quite short list, because the situation is much more complex than just basically 4 categories, and that's it. And like you said, there are profiles matching. So in my case, for example, my software is proprietary. That's one story. My software is MIT. It's another story. My software is GPL and then something else. That's a different story. So this mapping has to be explained somewhere in this awesome licenses repository. And then maybe on top of the texts, which is going to be the catalog, like you said, there are 100 licenses, right? So maybe more. So it's going to be a long catalog of licenses. And then maybe a number of scripts, like simple scripts. Maybe you have designed one script for Bash, one script for Java, one script for Ruby, one script for Python. Like, it depends on my build. So if I'm building in Python, then I probably get your script, which is in Python. If I'm okay with the Bash, then I'm going to take a script in Bash. So a number of scripts which use the knowledge base. That's going to be like a supplementary, scripts which help me to integrate your knowledge base with my build tool. And then people will, and I'm more than sure that the volunteers will start contributing to your knowledge base when you make it open like this. Because right now your tool doesn't look like a knowledge base. It looks like a knowledge base is somewhere deep inside the product, and nobody's gonna go into license.cj file. I have to know closure. No way, I'm not gonna help you. But if each file is going to be just a text file where anybody can just jump in and say, hey, you forgot about my license, which is blah, 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 university from nowhere / license. We invented it. So we just jump into your repository, just submit a new text file, and it gets integrated into the whole knowledge base. So maybe you can invent your own format for this knowledge base. I don't know. It's up to you. But that's how I would use it if you make it this way. If you give me the script or maybe a number of scripts and a list of like licenses where each time when your script triggers a bug for me, then I can go to this file and everything is there explained. And then I can show it to my lawyer, to my boss, to whatever. I can go, around the office explaining, look, this is the file, and see the reasons here, the text is here, and they don't match with our license. So let's resolve it. Maybe there could be in this file, even though, like you suggested, even the resolution procedure. So if I trigger you on that, if your license doesn't match with this one, so I suggest you a list of actions. Maybe you can do this, that. Maybe you can rename your files, or maybe you can, I don't know, do something else.
I see. Yeah, that's a valuable feedback. Thank you. And actually, just a little note about the number of these license types. Actually, I'm pretty open about my plans, my roadmap. If you go over the GitHub, you will see the issues section. And also I added a project section, which is a very simple Kanban board. And one of the tasks that I would like to take probably next is to a little bit extend what I call permissive licenses, because it's actually much more complex than that. Because some licenses are kind of public domain equivalent. Some are more like notice, requiring notice, preserving original copyright notice. So it is more complex.
And I would actually recommend to improve the documentation a little bit. But I think that's coming from the situation where you merge two things together. So maybe that's why the documentation. But right now it's quite unclear from the README file. When I open it, I don't understand how to. I mean, there is no procedure on how to use it. So it says license compliance tool, detect lines names and types, identify lines types for given. So it's better to start with take your file, create this, click this button, get this, in the end, get that. So like, tell me the story of how I can use your tool, just right from the first line. Because now it's quite descriptive. So you're like a Wikipedia page, like explain it. This is license. You assume that I know what I'm I know exactly what it is. I know what I'm looking for. But in most cases, I don't know what I'm looking for. I would love your instructions to follow me, to go with me through the process. So in the beginning, I would say, first, maybe even say the problem. So in the first paragraph, I would say you have an open source or you have a proprietary software and you use open source packages. If you violate the licenses, then you're doing something illegal in the bold. And then you say, in order to check whether it's true or not, you do this. First step, second step, third step, step number 5, and then you get the result, and then you know what to do. And then after that, you can go with supported formats. Then you go into details like installation, like more details when I'm interested. First, you catch my interest, catch my attention. So immediately say, hey, there's a problem. You're breaking the law. And then I'm just, oh, really? And then you say, I can help you to find out how, or maybe not. So let's check it out, what's going on in your project. And then I go through the steps, and then I understand. And then I use your tool.
Yes, I agree. And this is something related to
the README file.
Yeah, it is in README file, and also for now, this tool is something that goes along with myself, with my personal expertise. And if I want to make it more widespread, I surely have to.
But do you want to?
Actually, yes, I want to, because recently I found out that some people that don't know me personally started to using it and started to submit some feedback, and I see that there is a value in this project. So yeah, this is one of the reasons why I'm here. So I wanted to hear some feedback.
But I see that you're quite active on open source on GitHub. You have a lot of products there. You have 80 repositories, so you're not a stranger.
Well,
Sure.
I cannot say this 80 repository is something that I developed. So I did participate in some projects, including some very popular ones, but I think I can do more than that.
And how did you, why did you decide to create this one? What's the story of this product?
Well, as I said, there may be different motivation for contributing to open source. Sometimes people want to refactor something to get maybe the core out of the projects, and so that it's easier to share it with to incorporate into other projects. Sometimes it's just tinkering, something like building something from scratch to have if you're a maker by nature, so you like do things by hand. Sometimes it may be something more sophisticated, like, I don't know, people live in the company and want to to have something that they can reuse on other projects, and which I think also quite
But
normal.
here, what's the story with this one? How did you start this one?
My personal motivation was to learn about Clojure programming language. This is the first one. The second one was to get deeper into version resolution used in Python, and specifically when this Python packaging manager changed something on the newer versions. It has broke my pipeline in my projects, and I wanted to get deeper into understand how it works. So yeah, that was something to learn deeper, some topics, some programming languages, ideas.
Nice. So are you happy with that? I mean, did you get the fun from this product, or are you still struggling?
No, I have a lot of fun, actually, especially with the topics as complex as legal stuff, like licenses. It is huge. I mean, you can dedicate the whole life
now
to it.
Now you're an expert.
By no means I'm an expert, but I think it's a super cool topic. I can go deeper. I can learn a lot, and I can keep me busy for my whole life, I guess.
Well, I'm sure that people will know about your product after the interview, but I strongly believe that if you make it like I suggested, you like turn it into knowledge base, then people will be very interested to read about your reasons, to understand why you make the decisions about the license, and then they will contribute, and they will start correcting you, suggesting you some maybe better reasons, maybe complaining about your mistakes, maybe arguing with you. So you can create like a place on GitHub where people will discuss licenses, and not only licenses, what they are, but actually it's going to be a place where we make decisions about them. And you can be the central part of this decision making process for the whole GitHub community, because I don't think it exists right now. I mean, you can check, maybe we're talking about something which exists already, but if it doesn't exist, if we don't have such a knowledge base, then you have a great opportunity right now to catch this this trend and make it.
Yeah, actually, there is you probably know, this is actually kind of the main project for Stack Overflow project, which is called Stack Exchange. This is something like meta project the Stack Overflow is derived from. And there is an experimental website called open source stackexchange.org. And this is something like Stack Overflow specifically for licenses and open source development. But it is not very active, unfortunately. But I would say this is a great source of knowledge. So you can ask questions there. And this is actually the source that helped me a lot when dealing with categorizations.
Let me check. Yeah, it's still in beta.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but that's in general about open source. Yeah, I see they talk about licenses, but or it's only about licenses.
It is mostly about licenses.
Yeah, I can see that. Are you a moderator there?
I'm not yet, but I've participated.
Actively.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. So in this case, even better. So in this case, you can have like a knowledge base with the links to these discussions on Stack Exchange.
Mm-hmm.
In this case, it will be even better. So I can jump into your knowledge base, I can find the license, and in this file, which belongs to the license, I can see links to discussions on OpenStack, on Open Exchange, Stack Exchange. So that will be like a connection between these two communities, because your knowledge base will be like static files which are fixed, which decisions are made there. So it's for sure, because I can rely on them. They're not only made there, but they are in a formal way. So there are files in YAML, for example. So I can connect my tool, and many companies can connect their tools to your knowledge base, and maybe even ignore your scripts, but connect to the tools, to the files. I can design, maybe sitting in a private company, I can design my own toolkit, which will use your knowledge base and make decisions on top of this knowledge base. So you will be the author. It's like Wikipedia. Wikipedia, it's not just a collection of text. There are also the RDF format behind that. So you can download any articles from Wikipedia, which are formatted in XML with a well-defined structure of information. And many artificial intelligence, machine learning tools in the world rely on this information from Wikipedia, because Wikipedia is not just a bunch of long text. It's a structured information, structured text. And that's why and this is what makes these texts useful for machines, for training, for machine learning. The same as your knowledge base can be used for tools and instruments. And your instrument could be one of probably the most simple instruments, just a number of scripts which can work with this knowledge base. So in a simple scenario, I provide you the list of licenses, you check how they match each other, and then you just fail 1 or 0. You can give me the exit code. But that's a simple usage. In my case, sitting in a large company, I can do much more sophisticated analysis.
Actually, yeah. I developed this project in my spare time, like on weekends or later after the normal working hours. But I was happy enough to get this project incorporated in the company I work for as a contractor. And actually, this kind of linking to discussion on this open source Stack Exchange, something that I used to have in my company. So when we got something triggered on the pipeline, and I had to explain to my colleagues why it is a false positive, I started the discussion on the open source Stack Exchange, and linked this thread to my decision, and that was helpful.
Okay. All right, I think it's time to finish. So I think it's an interesting direction you're moving. The current product definitely is in the beginning of the long journey. So in my opinion, if you keep going the right way, then you have all the chances to be the place #1 in the world for the licenses of software.
Thank you.
All right, thanks for coming. It was interesting for me to learn what's going on in the area of licenses, because I didn't know about that. So now I know that it's not so easy, and there's hundreds of them. So that was quite quite interesting for me as well.
Yeah, thank you. And I think the feedback and the suggestion from your side was really cool. I think I will take them as a direction to my next development.
All right. Thanks for coming. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.